Hi, thanks for joining. Now, if you're travelling in a car and you're the driver, it's important to look out for signs. We have signs that tell us what you should do. Red circle signs are negative orders, keep to the speed limit. And blue round signs are positive orders, like a cycling path. Warnings are in triangles, like there's a junction ahead. And signs that tell you where you want to go are often in green and white. And there are signs that tell you what you need. Maybe you see a sign for somewhere to have lunch. Signs that keep you safe. I wonder what your journey would be like if you ignored those signs. You could end up in an accident, make yourself unsafe, and cause all sorts of havoc. We've seen it. So signs are important, and they are there to be followed. Signs are not just for the road. I train regularly about human trafficking, and one of the things that we talk about is to spot the signs of human trafficking, as it's hidden in plain sight. So, when we come to our reading today, this story is the first of several signs in the Gospel of John. Indeed, John's Gospel is often described as a book of signs. And the first of these are in our story. We have here a sign, and we have learned how signs have something to say. Signs is actually the word that's used in the original story, and some people refer to them as miracles, but the important point is, what was John trying to say about this incident? Just like a sign, he was pointing to something. And this is what we need to watch out for. Now, this story is set in a wedding setting. And there are three things that are going on in this sign. And we see that through the circumstance, through Mary, and through Jesus, and how God is at work in all of that. Now, the circumstance is a wedding. A high-stakes social event for the family. This was not some kind of modern-day romance setting where it's just about the couple. This was two families coming together through a couple being married. The whole village was looking on. It was more like choose your love and love your choice. However, the pressure behind this was on the bride's family to provide for the party. And this would last for a week, and the guests were supplied constantly with wine. And the party trick was that the good stuff, the good wine, came out first. And when the guests get inebriated enough not to notice later on the poorer wine coming out, well, that was the idea. But to run out of wine at all would bring shame on the family. And this was on the verge of what was happening in our story. A crisis was looming. You see, circumstances are like that. Things don't work out for us as we expect, and we know fine well what that's like in the past year. The pressures placed on us can expose us for who we are, and we can be fearful, and that might find out how we come across to others. As the story reveals here, we can start running on empty, and it will soon show. It may affect us in different ways. Maybe it's money, other people's opinions about us, our independence, whether we have it or whether we've lost it. If it is threatened, it can make us anxious. And in our story, wine was at the centre of life, of village life where Jesus lived. So not to have enough was a telltale sign that your life was not appearing to be as blessed in the land of promise. It's a hard place to reach, that life is not turning out as expected, and can be harder when we know that others know how that is for us. The sign in our story has something to say about that. Another thing to notice in the story is Mary. Now, Mary is a key figure. She's right in the middle of it. She appears to be an important person at the wedding, and she is organising it and has authority for the servants. So she feels responsible and she wants to fix the problem. The problem here was there's no wine. She had a son who could fix it, so fix it. I've great admiration for her, but I see in her a shortcoming that I'm guilty of too. I'm a typical guy who, in my role as whether as a husband or a dad, can fall into that trap of let's fix this. It's not always the best approach. But we all have different levels of responsibility through our lives, and whether it is just for ourselves or for our nearest and dearest, or for those who look to us for responsibilities in work, who depend upon us, or whether it's just a stranger surprised by our kindness. The challenge in life is that we can't always fix problems for those who are responsible for. Even if we fix them, there's more to life than just fixing things. If that is all we think there is to life, then this sign here in this story reminds us that there's more to it. So in this story, we can deduce that Mary's husband Joseph has passed away, and this may explain why Jesus lived with his mum and his brothers until he was about 30. And as with the oldest, he was the one that had the duty to look after the whole family. So Mary expected that Jesus would help here to get something sorted out about the wine. And then the party could continue. And the bride and groom would not be ashamed along with the family. Simple? Not really. And not even for Jesus. He's being imposed upon. As we see Jesus, we think about other things. He was trying to focus on, well, my time has not come yet. He was the chosen one. But he hadn't shown himself yet to be that. What would a party trick of water into wine contribute to God's timing to show God's love to the world? But still Mary was sure that Jesus would help. So she told the servants to obey his instructions. Now, whatever you make of the next part of the story, when water is turned into wine, well, it's up to you. But when it's John that's speaking through this gospel, what is he trying to say out of this sign? That's what we need to focus on. What is this sign pointing to? There are some clues we cannot miss. So we need to spot the signs, and if we see them, they will help us to spot the signs why the story is for us too. You see, for Jesus, the circumstance of crisis and a pushy mother are not ideal, but despite both these, God works through it. And we'll find that through life. A crummy set of circumstances, short-sighted individuals who could be our loved ones, our work colleagues, our church folk. Each of us still may be looking for things to be fixed. And yet God's purposes can work through that despite all of that. And so that story may be something to say to us. So here are some clues. The pots of water in the story, the trust of the servants, the rich wine, the joy of the guests. You see, these pots of water were unlikely in terms of being purposes for drinking. These were enormous pots. They're most likely for ceremonial use, for cleansing. It's called mikveh. Now mikveh was a ceremony for women who maybe had a baby or maybe they've just had their period. Imagine the shock hearing in this story that the water that's in these jars is going to be turned into wine for wedding guests to drink. We get so fixated on water into wine, we miss the point that this is not a divine distillery miracle. This is a move away from focusing on what drains us to what fills us, turns from what drags us down to what lifts us up, moving from purification to pure wine. A time where we are isolated to a time that we're together. The water speaks of a time of separation. Wine speaks of a time to be together. This would not be lost on Jesus or John's readers telling the story and bringing this point home. The result is the trust of the servants, the joy of the guests, and the relief of Mary. even when John drops in that it's on the third day, is a day that's recognised throughout many other stories of a time of restoration. Just in case we missed that point. The sign, we are told, is that Jesus needs to be our source of joy. And that certainly is needed to be heard for this world at this time. There's something to reflect on here about our source of joy. The twists and turns of circumstance can awaken us to that. And what we thought we could be a source of our joy could be very fleeting. We may even think we have a sense of purpose that seals our life and what we are to do. But from our story we find out that it's more to it than that. There's a mystery to that. That Jesus is our source of joy. There's an element of faith needed to explore what that means. There's a journey to be had that needs to make that conscious in our lives. I'm just going to suggest some starting points, and I'm going to use TLC just to make it easy to remember when we're finished here. T is to think about something. When was the last time we asked Jesus for help? How did that work out for you? It might have turned out differently than we expected. Why do you think that did? What did we take from that time in our life? Do you think we missed out on something that we could have taken from it? L is listen to something. Now, my son during lockdown has created a 10-episode podcast called Grasping Joy, where he was inviting a guest to come on and speak about how joy comes into their life. They're just 20 minutes, something to listen to, maybe to get the grey matter going. Joy is a rare commodity during this pandemic. It might be the tonic you need, so try it out. I know it's a plug, but it's something you can do after this, and the link will be in this week's worship resources on our webpage. But this is the source of how he works his discussion. He says joy is a steadfast state of mind and being where the heart and soul are rooted in contentment, assurance and hope. Joy is being present in the moment, but it's not dictated by the likes of happiness. Joy is the key that allows people not to be chained down by circumstance, but lets them live life to the fullest, even when it seems impossible. Have a listen. So we've got T, we've got L, we've got C. C is for care for someone. Why not be a source of joy to someone else? Not just make them happy, but be a source of joy regardless of how they feel. Can you do that? It's not always easy, but it's worth doing. I spoke to someone this week who visited someone, and they gave me a call that took me by surprise. But there was two things that came out of that call. First of all, this person just thanked me for phoning and talking to the person that they visited. But also, this person said, I'm tired. But you know, this person did a good thing, being there for the other person in the midst of their need. Caring for someone brought deep joy. It wasn't happiness, it was joy. Being there at the right place, at the right time, doing the right thing. That's what care for is for someone else. And you'll find joy in doing it. So remember, TLC. Think of something, listen to something, care for someone. Thanks for listening, and take care.